I don't wanna do it, but I ain't afraid to die. Lord knows I ain't perfect, I ain't trying to tell a lie. It's understood and I ain't in all that woulda, coulda, shoulda. Trying to say you want peace, then you burn the.
It was my God's honest that I was all about a non-violent approach, but it seems truth is a non-topic.
What up, though?
Hi,
Minivan musician back at it again.
this is Verb. I'm Danielle.
And we are talking white collar crime, kind of an umbrella term. But of course, we brought Adam Thick on for his input. For those of you who don't know, we don't have his bio video up yet, but he was incarcerated. A federal investigation got him and a partner for counterfeiting currency. Mm-hmm. And he spent some time in prison. Not a lot of time, because he kind of knew some ways to work the system, which will be a whole different video on its own.
You'll get to see, yes.
But of course, I went to him to pick his brain a little bit about these types of offenders, because you're always hearing things like, whenever you see one of these people profiled, they talk about the psychology behind them. They're like,
right.
They're like these narcissist person, like they're psychopaths and all this stuff. Like they're always into the psychological aspect of them. But it's interesting to learn that he doesn't feel like, and he was in there with some of the
guys from Enron and everything.
Yeah, and he doesn't really feel like that it's more prevalent amongst white collar guys
to be psychopaths.
No, it's more
sociopaths, but
more opportunity than anything.
Exactly.
Which makes complete sense. It's your environment.
It does.
For instance, like he said, if you took, like we were talking about, if you took some of the mob guys and put them in a different situation, they may have run a corporation.
Yeah.
Well, if you take some of these white collar people and put them in the hood when they're young, they might have been drug dealers. They might have, you know what I mean?
Kingpins,
it's a lot of greed. It's a rush from the greed with some of them, but
pushing the envelope, see how much more you can get away with. Like, it's like, oh, I don't really need to do this, but I want to do it, and I'm going to see if I can do it. So here we go.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even about the challenge. It's just that, like, I see a way to get money.
Right.
It's less dangerous than these other ways people are getting it illegally. So I'm going to give it a shot.
It's an addiction, too. It's like what he was saying, that they kind of get, like, addicted to doing that. And, yeah, I definitely agree with him on that for sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's an interesting topic to me, just for the simple fact that what we talked about, like a certain personality in it is kind of like part anarchist, part capitalist.
Yeah.
Kind of interwoven, and he gave us a citation on, I forget the guy's name who came up with the term.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
But it's that's one thing that I think is a common thread with a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
Is that they're not really, I wouldn't call it antisocial personality disorder necessarily, because I'm not a fucking doctor, but...
Right, yeah, we're not, diagnosing anybody, by the way, disclaimer. No. We're not doctors. These are, our educated opinions, and between talking to other people, who've been through these
A little bit of common sense, a little bit of reading, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly, a little experience, this, that, and the other.
But it's more like a... you're kind of separate from mainstream society.
Yeah, it is like a different echelon, of people.
And it's not necessarily, not everyone who thinks that way is a criminal, and not every one of these criminals thinks that way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a separatist kind of, not based on race or anything like that. But I don't really like the way that my freedoms are being, infringed on. And I like to make money, but I don't like to give it all away to the government.
Right, and all these other people are cheating everybody out of everything.
Right.
So, why can't I do it a little bit?
Right, and my whole point with him, and I didn't really state it this way, is that I don't see it as the white collar stuff as evil as a lot of other types of crimes. I mean, take this however you want it, but it has to do with the type of victim.
Yeah, where we were saying, that, like, no, their crimes, the white-collar criminals, say, like, the Enron and everything like
Bernie
that,
Madoff.
Bernie Madoff of the world, like, they are not completely victimless crimes,
No.
but it's different. In Bernie Madoff's case, like we said with Adam, like he actually had some people where it's like, their whole lives were destroyed. They lost everything, their homes, their lives, their savings, their their everything.
He's an extreme.
So he's an extreme, and he did hurt some people that were even close to him.
But
too.
for instance, like I worked with that kid who's a scammer, and he's a part of a big network of scammers. And my whole thing was, he asked me what I thought of it because I'd been involved in crime at a young age. And I said, in all honesty, dude, what you guys do, like, worst case scenario, I don't get my money back for like a couple weeks.
And that was my kind of, dumb fault.
I get my money back.
For trusting to do that in the first place,
Or no, I mean, even if you're a person who wasn't involved, but they scam you.
Right.
Like, I'm saying I get my money back. Mm-hmm. The bank takes a hit, but it's a small hit. They have insurance for it, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So I'm that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, well, I don't really see the evil. And some people be like, they're scammers. No, they are. And I don't respect it at all.
No, we don't condone or respect it or think that it's like, in some way, okay or like better to do these things. We're just saying that, like, in comparison to, say like a sex offender or, a serial killer or something like that.
Or even somebody who's selling dope that could be tainted.
Killing
you know
people,
what I mean? Like
knowingly killing people.
Causing addiction.
I mean, those are crimes that, have very clear victims, that you can't get around it. You're ruining people's lives, like a lot of them. Theirs, they could be dying and then their families' lives are ruined and then just, so on and so forth. And that to me is like, it's just so different in my eyes, from, stealing from people who already have money or, preying on the poor. I mean, that's not what they're doing. So it's like...
And my thing also comes from...
Scales a little bit, are tipped.
Exactly. And my whole thing is like, if I were to look at things in like a utopian sense, like, if the government and the executives and everybody was above board, that would be amazing. Obviously I want there to be a moral fabric to where nobody's a scammer. Nobody's...
Absolutely,
where everybody's...
That would be perfect, right?
But the thing with it is, from the top on down, everyone's scamming.
Yes.
The government is scamming.
Yeah.
The lobbyists are scamming. The CEOs are scamming. So if you were to tell me we are going to go after and punish, like, say the Biden thing going on right now.
Right.
And if you're going to go after and punish all these powerful people who commit what would be considered white-collar crime as equally as you went after Adam, I'm all for it.
Right.
I hate theft. Like, I truly think that everybody should just get their own money, not rip each other off, this, that, and the other. But then when I look at it in a broad sense, I'm kind of like, well, if we're going to have certain rules and moral fabric, it needs to apply to everyone.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of like rebelliousness or something like that, where I'm kind of like, you guy, the middle class guy who's got a good idea to scam a bunch of people a certain way, go do it. Get even with the system that's scamming us every second of our lives. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like almost like a Robin Hood type of...
That's exactly how I think of it. It's, rob the rich and feed the poor.
And I'm not advocating for it.
No, we are not advocating for it at all. We're not advocating for any kind of crime whatsoever.
To be honest, especially if you're like someone with a family... I mean, I don't respect somebody putting their freedom and stuff on the line.
It's not ever worth it.
For a little more profit or for whatever it is.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you're not benefiting your people.
No, not at all. Especially when you're gone. You know?
So, I mean, obviously, like I said, in a utopian situation where it's like, hey, how would you want society to be? Like, how do you think people should be? How do you want to move? I'd be like, well, everybody's going to kind of do the right thing and the vast majority of situations. And if they don't do the right thing, they're going to apologize and they're going to basically repent for their sins. But
that is not the world that we live in.
Yeah, when I know that it's kind of like steroids in baseball. I have these freaking arguments every single day in these Facebook groups. I'm like, listen, at that point in time, everyone was doing it. So we're only going to essentially punish and talk about the guys who got caught. Meanwhile, everybody's doing it. The guys that got caught are the guys that were just playing better. Those guys were always better before the steroids.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a little bit better than better when they're on them, but their competition was on them too. So it's like everybody's cheating, then I feel like nobody's cheating. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Some people are going to be confused by that, but just take a listen for a second, and you'll get what
it's kind of like if it sounds terrible that a guy is bare knuckle in a UFC ring or something, beating the living shit out of a guy. But then you look from the other camera angle and see that the other guy's fighting bare knuckle too, or he's got some other advantage. He's got a fist packing type of thing going on or some stupid shit. Yeah, like I would say that it's an even playing field. I'm not saying everybody's scamming, but man, like a huge amount of the government, the policy, the lobbyists, all that stuff, and I know that YouTube's gonna make sure nobody sees this. I'm not on the level of Andrew Tate, but if I'm ever at that level, they're going to go back to this video because I'm basically saying that like
the whole damn world is a scam.
Big Pharma's a scam. Yeah, like the guy I work with, he thinks everything's a scam. We are living That's the only thing that racist piece of shit is right about.
Oh Lord,
is that everything's a scam.
He just said all the words.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Like everything is a bit of a scam. And it seems like we only go after the people. In this instance, it's not like baseball. You only go after the people who can't defend themselves.
Oh yeah, I mean that goes back forever. I mean, here we go with body count, no lives matter. I mean, it's true. It is absolutely true. If you are poor and you cannot afford a lawyer, they go after you.
Absolutely.
You are their target, no matter what.
And it makes sense, and we'll talk to Mike O'Keefe about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to get a conviction, obviously getting from point A to point Z, as far as when they federally indict somebody, it's like a 98% success rate. Well, if you don't have proper representation or knowledge or whatever the case may be, then obviously they get the Z quicker, they get that indictment easier, and their stats are better.
Right.
And you know what? There's some money behind that.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I'm just saying make an effort to go after those in power who do this because they're exploiting their power.
Exactly. Like seriously, like you guys.
I'm trying not to name people in certain situations.
You doing that shit, and then you're just like, why? Just I don't know.
Yeah, so it's kind of like I just rank it below a lot of other types of crime. That's what intrigued me about this. It's like I'm having a hard time explaining it because I'm just thinking that there's a lot of people. It's going to be real divisive where, 50% of people agree with me, 50 disagree. There's pretty much nothing I can say to change their mind.
No.
But,
I don't care. I don't want to change their mind.
If you really think about it, almost everybody in their family, or everybody, for the most part, probably has somebody in their family who is a victim of, like, SA.
Most people.
Or some kind of violent something.
If I could think of the statistic, I know all the statistics of this stuff, and if my brain wasn't so...
And I don't, because I don't want to know.
From running through with, my kids all day running around, I'd be able to think of it and, pop out the numbers right now, usually. But, the statistics for it are very high. They are very high. And
if you ask those people, if you could trade this SA happening to your mother, sister, whoever, for... I don't know, you getting taken for 50 grand out of 150 you have.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that you would choose the latter.
A lot of them would say that, even if it took all their money and everything they had, that they would still rather have that have happened than the other,
So, I mean, and as I'm saying this, I am realizing, like what Adam said about, and it's true, Bernie Madoff, a lot of his... He did cause people to commit to unlife themselves or whatever that word is. He did cause that. So I'm not talking about those extreme situations. I'm more talking about the people who are committing credit card fraud against a bank, or even people who counterfeit, like he was convicted of.
Right.
Things like that, or insurance scams. Trust me, the insurance companies are not going out of business anytime soon.
Right. Check
because
fraud,
your Aunt Beverly claimed to have a bunch of stuff stolen that didn't actually get stolen. Who gives a shit?
Right.
But that would be treated as white collar crime.
Yeah.
Or you have, like, say, insider trading, right? Martha Stewart. God, I wish I would have mentioned this to Adam. We talked about
yeah, exactly.
She goes to prison. And I'm not saying she shouldn't.
No, all right.
But hers was really minor if you look at the details. It's a gray area. But,
yes.
But then you look at Pelosi and her husband.
Yeah, what the hell?
Very obvious. Like, you'd have to do a 15-second investigation.
Yeah.
But yet, it's okay. Like, you find ways
Here we go again,
yeah, so and it's like, between her and the Clintons, they have the best record, like, in history or something. Like, statistically, like, as far as, like, investing and return and winning or losing on it, like, they've, like, never failed.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. Like, even somebody like Warren Buffett will be like, no, dude, you're going to fail if you're making $1 million investment.
Yeah.
Like, so, you know, and obviously within the government and lobbyists and whatnot, yeah, you know when something should be bought or sold. And yeah, a lot of times you're sharing that information. You're investing, like, through third party or whatever you're doing.
Yeah,
it's happening a lot, and you hardly ever see anything happen to those people.
No.
You know, so I'm just kind of like, well, like I said, if you go after everybody equally, punish everyone equally, fine. Then we'll have a society where, like, hardly anyone is going to cross that line. But that's not going to happen.
It'll never happen.
So I'm kind of like, whatever. Scammers keep scamming. Just don't affect my money or any, like, average person's money.
And once again, we're not condoning any type of crime, you know, or
like, what's worse?
like
somebody
that.
stealing from a corporation.
We're just...
Or, like, actually holding you at gunpoint and taking $100.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care. You could take $100 million from a corporation. I don't give a shit unless it's one that I absolutely want to still exist because their product is that important to me, which almost doesn't exist, I don't think. But I'm just joking around. But yeah, like, take $100 million from them, but don't break into this woman's house and take $100 from her, or,
you know,
or mug somebody
for life, you know,
in front of their kid or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like,
those are crimes that they may be considered, you know, like petty, where it's like, oh, you know, he just, you know, robbed this old lady and just stole her purse and she had, you know, $100 in it or whatever, and it's like, yeah, and that old lady, you know, went through hell. Why would you do that? Why did you target her?
You took her feeling of safety away.
Exactly, and that does not return.
You're doing psychological damage. I guess that's part of what this breaks down to. Are you psychologically damaging people?
Yeah.
To the point where they do something to themselves, or like, you know, they're scared all the time.
What type of damage are you inflicting? You know, are you inflicting physical damage upon these people? No. Are you inflicting, you know, emotional damage? Maybe a little bit, depending on, you know, who you're targeting as far as, you know, the money and whatever. Psychological damage, are you, you know, not really. You're not really inflicting psychological damage on these people. You know, somebody who goes through, you know, getting screwed over by a Ponzi scheme, you know, might lose a lot of stuff, but they're probably not going to need years upon years of therapy to heal themselves in life.
No.
So it's like, you know, here we go again with the
scales. It sucks when you go broke and, you know all that stuff, but
a lot of us go broke, you know, and you figure it out. You
a lot of us stay that way forever.
You don't need to go to therapy to try to find yourself again.
No.
You know, I mean...
But when you've had the sanctity, like, say, of your, like, you know, the safety of your home.
Yeah, as
now you can't sleep anymore.
Yeah.
You know, or your neighborhood, or whatever. You know, so that's I guess what I'm...
Bottom line, that's what we're getting
I guess it's just basically some bleeding heart shit, where I'm like,
you
know, I picture the old lady, I picture something happening to you, I picture something happening to a kid, and then I picture somebody running a scam on, you know, Facebook or something.
Yeah, a Cash App scam.
Whatever. You know? Whatever.
It's like, don't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be a part of it. But
I've had money stolen through Walmart.com, through an employee who, long story short, like, it was an employee who was able to intercept purchases they made through other people's names.
Yeah.
I've had, you know, Russian...
or something. Yeah, you too.
Some Russian entity bought some stuff in my name, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it was a pain in the ass. It took a while to get my money back, but I always got my money back. It didn't kill me. Actually, one of those, the timing of it was really bad.
It was. We really needed the money.
But it wasn't like...
You know, we weren't going to, you know, be cowering in our home, terrified to go to sleep because of it.
Or in my sense, like, I'll never cower. So basically, you would cause me to become a hyper-aggressive person.
Right, exactly.
Which is not good for anybody I'm around.
No.
You know, and it could take my freedom away. So, and I'm somebody who is a convicted violent criminal, and I was a convicted, I don't know if you call it white collar. It was theft related.
Mine was white collar. It was very petty, but it was white collar.
Right, and I'm saying, you know, I've seen both sides of it. And yes, the people who are involved in the theft related stuff are the weaselly type of people I don't want in my home.
Right.
I don't like them as people.
Yeah, I wasn't a good person back then when these things happened, you know. So it's like, and yeah, I wouldn't have wanted me in my home back then either.
In your sense, though, it wasn't like I don't see the convictions, you know, and the umbrella terminology and the way that they classify things. Like, I don't consider that you were a white-collar criminal.
I don't either. It just falls under that,
it's a financial crime or whatever.
It's a financial crime, yeah. It's
like you know, like you had other issues that were kind of pushing you to do it.
Exactly.
It wasn't like you were somebody who was just plain greedy. Just, you know
Trust
what I mean?
me, I didn't really get anything out of it, so I got some jail time out of it. That's it.
That's the worst part. Meanwhile, there are probably people who did 10 times worse who got no jail time. And I guess that's my whole point.
I know a couple of them.
I guess that's it. So, I mean, I guess that's pretty much all I have to say about the white collar thing. I just thought it would be interesting that if we did a separate segment from Adam's bio, picked his brain about this a little bit, and saw what he thought of this stuff as somebody who's not only been caught and then locked up with these types of offenders and stuff like that, but who's had a lot of time to think about it, who's changed as a person and can look back on it. And like he said, like, it was a lot of greed.
Yeah.
He could easily blame stuff in his childhood. He could blame the guy who was his partner, and you guys will learn why I say that, why it would seem like he could blame him for even being involved in it. All these different things, but he's like, no, you know, I didn't need the money. I wanted it.
He takes responsibility. You know?
Right. And I feel like there is a higher probably average IQ amongst white collar people. And, you know, I'm not saying that I like respect it or anything like that, but it is interesting to see the way that they are. It's odd. The way that they're you know, you're made to believe that they're this horrible menace and stuff like that, but maybe because of that higher intelligence, it does seem like I'd have to look this up, but they have a lesser I can never say that word. Recidivism rate. There we go. Your dad will have to say that a bunch of times when we interview. But yeah, like it's. I think they have a lesser rate of it because they're a little more intelligent. Whereas somebody and environment, like you said, if you're in the streets and you get out of prison, you go back to the streets.
Yeah, that's all you know and all you have.
It is what it is. Whereas a lot of these guys, they have other things. In prison, kind of, you know, they're like, you know what?
I don't want to go
horrible.
Back there. Right.
I can do pretty good without this. I was an idiot.
And like you said, a lot of them, you know, go on to live normal lives, and that, you know, a lot of the people that he was locked up with that he, you know, keeps in contact with were really good guys, and I believe that.
Yeah.
You know. I do. I believe that.
I just see a less of a chance of them being, you know,
coming
a
out
menace.
and reoffending and ruining someone's life, as opposed to, you know, people who come out and reoffend and reoffend and reoffend.
That's something we'll have to put it in the short or something, because I don't want to do a whole other segment on it. But I am going to look up the reoffense thing.
The rate, yes.
Yeah,
sure.
Because I think that's something that's really standing out in my mind right now. I'm convinced of it. Maybe I'm wrong. But it, you know, obviously SA or what SOs, people who commit SA
offenders. We gotta call them offenders. Basically.
Yeah, they can't stop doing it.
They almost always reoffend.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's an almost.
The statistics are so high on that, and once again, you know, I know all this stuff.
Yeah, she knows the stats on that.
It's been a long day.
And the percentage of guys who were like street level drug dealers, it's actually the same thing pretty much.
Yeah.
They always go back to it.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like I've known guys who did like fraud with stocks and stuff like that, They went to prison, like he was saying. They got out. And, you know, they ended up, like, managing their buddy's tech company or something.
Right, yeah.
You know, they may not get to be in the same field, but like he said, they pick up where they left off. They had assets to begin with. Mm-hmm. You know, like...
they go on living.
Like, say, at Kwame Kilpatrick, he loses his ability to practice law, but he finds something else that he can do. Whereas, because of environment, maybe not even because of the type of person, a lot of other people... Well, the offenders, it does have to do with that person. That's but somebody's like a drug dealer who's basically trapped in the hood their whole life, doesn't see another option. Like they're basically, you know, they're gonna do the same thing forever.
And not always, but
most of the time.
It's a high rate.
Yeah,
yes.
like, you know, I have some friends who really did change their lives.
Yeah, I have a few, but most of them didn't.
I have a lot who didn't.
A lot who didn't, a lot who are, you know, passed away now, a lot who are in prison, and they just keep it, you know, so yeah.
So I guess that's just, you know, what I wanted to pick his brain about. Was
and we'll have him on, you know, again for more segments, quite a few, so you'll be seeing him a lot.
I'm glad he brought up that there are real victims in this stuff, because a lot of people are kind of like, oh, well, these guys aren't even criminals, I'm not scared of them. Right. But it's like, no, I mean, some of them really are fucked up, and there is real victims in the situation. Yeah. You know, it may not be the type of victim that you're thinking about or seeing, but there is a victim. Mm-hmm. You know, you clean out somebody of their life savings, man. That's horrible. That's like
hard
heartbreaking.
To recover from.
But that's not the majority of white collar offenders. Yeah. Whereas we know what all SOs do, and we know what all violent criminals do. They might just use a different weapon. Mm-hmm. But in the vast majority of cases, the person is either innocent or didn't deserve even a fraction of what they did to him. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not talking about heat of the moment type shit. I think that a lot of that shouldn't even lead to the sentences it does, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in another pod. You know, I guess we have problems with how the criminal justice system deals with things, and how the government deals with things. Yeah. But who the fuck are we? You know what I mean? It's like. But this country, you are supposed to have this kind of input, and in a utopian situation, I'll keep saying that, in a perfect world, based on what this country is founded on, a whole bunch of us could get together and say, we don't like the way that the scales are imbalanced. Are tipping in this direction. Yeah. So this needs to change. Yeah. And it would get changed. But that's not something that exists, people. I'm sorry. No, it's not real. They made you believe that, but... Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody does now at this point. I hope not. But, man, it's like you missed the time when people even thought that. Whole different thing.
But, anyway, so, yeah, that is, you know, what we have to say about white-collar crime as of now. And I hope you enjoy the segment with Adam. And, you know, we'll see you guys
Make sure you check out, because I know this will air later than, you know... We're not putting this out right away. Yeah. Make sure you check out Adam's entire story.
Oh yeah, don't miss that.
You know, you'll see pieces of it on YouTube, but you'll have to go to Patreon to see the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But he is the most interesting man in the world. All of our I really believe that.
Are in the description. You know, to go hit our Patreon to support our Patreon. You know, and do the whole like and subscribe thing too.
And look at the segments that we have up, because we have full interviews with all those people that you see short segments and shorts from, and there's definitely some type of person we have on that list that you will be entertained by or motivated
or relate to, or you know, whatever. It's a lot of different types of people.
We pride ourselves on interviewing different types of people who can give you different outlooks on things. Absolutely. Some of them it's just entertaining to hear the life story, but some of them it's really thought-provoking, maybe motivational, you know, that sort of thing. So anyways, I think that's about it.
All right. Yep. Enjoy. Thank you for watching.
I say peace. We're doing an episode, like I told you, on the white collar crime, and part of it is because true crime is kind of making the rounds through like white collar stories. You know, like the girl, the blood girl.
Oh yeah, Elizabeth Holmes.
Yeah, stuff like that. And they've done a million. Yeah, and and Madoff, and all that. So, like, I wanted to ask you, because you've been around a lot of these guys, that the thing that these things focus on is their psychological makeup. Like, a white-collar criminal is different psychologically than other types of... Do you believe that to be true? Like, from other types of criminals?
Like, say, like a violent criminal or something like that.
Or a drug dealer?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all those guys are most of them were profit motivated, you know, but I think there's a lot of differences in, well, obviously in how they commit their crimes, because you have nonviolent offenders, you have violent offenders. A lot of violent crimes have nothing to do with a profit motive, you know?
Right.
So I mean, if we were just focusing on, you know, white collar crime, generally, a lot of those guys are in a position of power already, or they're in a privileged position. And I'm not talking woke bullshit. I'm talking.
No.
We already know.
Yeah.
They work in a company, or, you know, they're an executive, or, you know.
Yeah, there's a CEO or something like that.
Yeah. So, and what ends up happening is they see that they have access to, you know, resources and funds, and the mind starts thinking, you know, and
how can I get more?
Didn't get into it with the intention of, you know, ripping people off or robbing their company blind or something. It's a lot of times it's a crime of opportunity,
right? Or
start thinking, or, you know, stuff builds up. But there are guys that, you know, like you said, that Theranos chick, she was lying from the very beginning, so she knew.
Yeah.
Another example is Sam Bankman-Fried from FTX. I mean, everything that came out of that kid's mouth was a lie, and he practically sunk the whole crypto universe.
Yeah, he did.
You know, so
is that probably trying to gain notoriety type of thing, being the top guy for attention or for whatever it is he was after? It wasn't just money.
Yeah.
You know, something like that.
His case is really complicated because it wasn't just money, but everyone connected to him, his whole family, they're all Democrats. They're all in political positions. And there is evidence that there was a lot of collusion between them. And also not just, you know, with that aspect of it, but the way he was running the business. Yeah, he was just, you know, lying about a lot of stuff and just hiring totally unqualified people and having like a ridiculous, like, you know, corporate culture like they had over at Twitter before Elon took over, you know, slush funds, code words for, you know, just ripping people off completely. Like, it was the most mismanaged exchange in the history of crypto. But I mean, like, it was like a not a comedy of errors, but more of a just a whole storm of fraud and all kinds of, you know.
It's off topic, but do you think that he started doing the whole thing maybe for political purposes? Like, not so much that, oh, I've got this thing going now so I can feed this, but more like, I'm going to find a way to feed this, so I'm going to do this crypto thing. Like, do you think he had the political thought in mind when he started?
There was definitely some aspect to it, yes, because he made staggering campaign contributions to the Democratic Party, and a lot of, you know, other people that, you know, a lot of that money was just, you know, investors' money, you know, but that they didn't know he was just taking their funds and using it for contributions. I mean, that's illegal. You can't do that, you know?
Right. So I mean, like you're saying, as far as the white collar guys, they're in a position of power, and it's an opportunity thing. Obviously, not necessarily a profit thing, because they're already doing pretty well financially. So is it something to do with maybe the challenge? Because I know with your thing, I think you told me once that I didn't need the money. It was just, I don't know, like
seeing if you could do it,
seeing if you could pull it off type of thing.
Yeah.
Almost like a puzzle or a challenge.
Well, I wouldn't say I didn't need the money. I wanted the money.
Right. Yeah. Right. There is a difference.
and I saw, you know, an opportunity, and I, you know, looking at everyone else who was making money illegally, I was like, there's too many steps with this. You gotta, you know, do this or that to get money my way. I just make the money. You know,
Right. Why
If
not
all the
just
stats
get
was-
on to the meat
That's
of
fucking
it.
hilarious.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, that's pretty funny. It's like, I could take money and buy drugs and
Yeah.
and then sell drugs to get money, and then
Yeah,
it's like,
Two
no,
types
dude, I'm
of
just gonna make
making
money.
You can make money by doing stuff,
Or you can
just
make money.
the money.
exactly.
So I mean, there is a certain like that's what we were saying before we connected with you. Is I was like, you know, you have drug dealers, you have white collar crime, and obviously you have like horrible things like you know, sex
your
offenders
murder
and
all that. Type
all
of
that.
stuff.
Yeah, and it seems as though they go really hard on white collar crime, especially like when you compare it to drug dealers in a sense.
It's unbelievable because I mean, you know, being in a courtroom at one point in my life, I saw, you know, people that were in line to get sentenced and whatnot, or, you know, to be arraigned, this, that, and the other. And there's an uttering and publishing charge for a piddly ass little check, and it's a 14-year felony, you know, and they're treating you like you're this menace to society. And then some guy goes up who stabbed somebody in the lung, collapsed their lung, and killed him, and he's got a 7-year max. And I'm just like,
Yeah, like why do you?
how does that make any sense? He killed this guy.
Like, why do you personally
But this
think
check
that is?
going to put them away for 14 years, possibly? Like, that's crazy.
Like, why do
It
you
is
think
crazy.
that
It's-
is exactly?
It's ridiculous. It's a you know, a huge disparity in, you know, making the crime fit the punishment, of course. But I do think that the criminal justice system is primarily more concerned with financial crime than crime, because violent crime in a way serves a purpose for them, but financial crime that hits them in the pocket. They want to have a monopoly on finance. Okay.
Right.
And that's why they counterfeit every day. You know what I mean? It's legal when they do it.
Right.
Yeah.
See, that's
When
thought
I
you
do it.
have a viewpoint like that, where it's like they're in the business of fraud. They don't want to
Yeah.
let you commit fraud.
You can't be stepping on their toes. You know?
That's exactly it. And that'll make more
like
people do it.
Got to make an example out of you.
And that's why, like in the federal system, for example, financial crimes, the penalties keep increasing with like $100,000. You know, like, so that's why when you see Enron, like for example, the Enron guys, they got like 20 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I was in prison, one of those Enron guys were still in there. And I think they got busted in like 90, what was it, early mid 90s or something.
Yeah, like 95 or something, maybe.
I was young, so yeah. It
So
was like,
and one of those guys was still in there when I was in there, and then and obviously they're looking at millions and millions of dollars. So the more 100,000, it keeps adding up. The penalties keep increasing. So you end up, you know, especially nowadays where financial crimes are easily in the millions, you're always going to end up with a huge sentence because, like I said, I think the system is geared more towards financial crime because, you know, corporations, you know, and government, like the criminal justice system are so interwoven, you know, to make examples of people with that because they want to control the monopoly on that.
yeah.
Yeah, see, my stance on it that some people may not like with our segment of this is that, and I told that one woman this that was in a true crime that I was working through, and she was really offended. I said, in a lot of cases, I barely see a crime. If you're, say, taking something from a corporation that has insurance to cover that money, or good example is you've got a guy who runs a hedge fund. All of the people, and this isn't every case, but all of the people who are investing know damn well that it's something dirty.
Yeah.
When a guy can come to you and you've been investing your whole life, and they come to you and say, I can guarantee you within a year I'll double your money, and after 2 years I'll quadruple it. You know damn well you're buying into something that's at least in a gray area. You're almost not a victim, in my opinion. You kind of got involved in something by proxy where it's kind of like, I'll let him do the dirty work, but yeah, wink, wink, I know something's going on here.
Yeah, but when shit hits the fan, you know.
Whereas with like a sex crime or, you know, whatever, a violent crime or even a robbery, you got real victims in that situation.
Yeah, people whose lives are completely destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's white collar stuff they consider white collar when they're doing schemes or whatever scams on the phone through like old people and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
But I just mean that, like you're saying, that the penalties are very steep, and in a lot of instances, I feel like it's a lot of wealthy people just trying to get more wealthy, doing another crooked thing, and the guy who came up with the idea is going to go to prison forever. Meanwhile, the people that were complicit in it and knew better, nothing's happening to them, and poor victims, they lost $100,000, but they're worth $20 million.
Right.
It's like, not really a crime to me.
I'm not really
barely a crime.
I'm shedding tears for you so much. But
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And so that's kind of my viewpoint on this, is that in a lot of cases, I don't feel like there's, I don't know. I don't really.
It doesn't seem like there's as concrete of a victim as there is, in other cases, obviously, where it's like, a family lost a child. And
it doesn't impact the community or society on the level that these other things do.
Right.
Like somebody commits certain acts against a child, that child's probably essentially ruined forever. Their life is. Or obviously, you take someone's life, or even you break into their home in a violent manner.
Then you're scared.
They're screwed up forever.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you got a guy who does some kind of financial scam where he skims a penny off the dollar from a corporation, or has, you get what I'm saying. To me, it feels kind of
like it's not completely victimless, but it's
it's almost along the lines of prostitution, where it's like, really, how is society being hurt here? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
There's insurance to cover these things. There's these companies aren't losing money in these situations.
Yeah.
All they do is they charge their clientele or whoever a little bit more next quarter because you stole such and such this quarter.
Right.
It's simple.
I agree with you on the part about that's the mindset for a lot of guys is, well, I'm just, there's no victim here. I'm just screwing around with an entity, a corporation, insurance anyway. So who cares? You know what I mean? It is a mentality. It's a very popular mentality. It's also criminal behavior.
Right.
For sure. Yeah.
I still, to some extent, that's how I used to feel too. I was like, well, if I'm the government or a corporation, who's getting hurt? There is no victim. You know what I mean? It's a faceless entity that has insurance and, millions of dollars that they probably stole anyway. So who cares?
And maybe I'm a little bit like the bank robbers back in the 30s and stuff, to where, people cheered them on because they hated the banking system because of the depression and everything. Maybe I'm kind of like, I hate these corporations. Maybe I'm a little biased, where I'm like, well, because they're always tied in with governmental stuff that's swaying society. And it really bothers me. I'm like, go ahead, take something from them. I don't care. It's kind of like murdering a murderer.
Yeah, like I see that. I totally get that point of view. It's like there's evil corporations like Nestle and Monsanto, and brought untold misery to millions of people. So it's like it's hard to feel sorry for a lot of these corporations. I don't condone or espouse.
Right.
Well, right. Yeah.
Oh, that's something else I wanted to ask you. Like, and obviously, I'm not saying you particularly. But do you feel like there's an incidence where this may be a righteous reason for the harsh sentencing and everything that they have? I'm just playing devil's advocate. Do you feel like a white collar criminal has a reoffense pattern? Like they say, a sex offender can't stop. They're going to do it their whole life.
They're going to get out and reoffend.
Is that the case with white collar guys, where it's like, you let them out, they're going to find another scheme. They're not going to, go work a 9 to 5 or whatever.
I'd say it's, from what I've seen, I'd say it's about half.
Yeah.
Half
That's actually not that high.
Yeah.
Half the guys get out and they've learned their lesson.
Right.
Like actual real criminals to begin with, they just kind of started taking advantage of the situation, got more crooked, taking bribes, this, that, and the other thing. So guys do learn their lesson and don't want to, experience that again.
Yeah.
But some white collar criminals have made, it was a lifestyle before, like credit card fraud. Guys that were literally addicted to credit card fraud because it was so easy for them to do.
Yeah, that dopamine hit.
It's so lucrative, that it was like way better than drug dealing for them. So they were like, it's hard to give that up,
You're usually not going to get murdered over that either. The drug game obviously brings certain worries that, you know what I mean? Like it's smarter. if you actually have a good plan in place, it is a little more intelligent. We just got off the phone with Mike O'Keefe, like setting up the interview with him. And I told you a little bit about him. I guess he actually worked with some cases that involved upper echelon of white collar crime. Probably he was in homicide a lot. So there's probably a homicide involved with those high stakes and stuff like that. And that's kind of what we're trying to get to the bottom of, is like what he thinks of the psychology of someone and that particular lane of criminology. Like, in other words, do you think that, because a lot of times the white collar guys psychologically have a lot in common with CEOs, have a lot in common with, say, even a quarterback who can stay cool under pressure, think quickly, all those things. All those guys have a high incidence of psychopathy. Yeah. High percentage. Do you think a lot of the guys that you encountered who are locked up for some of the bigger schemes and stuff, do you think they're a little bit psychopathic? Do you think they're a little bit unfeeling, a little bit narcissistic, all those different traits?
Yeah, some of them for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't say the majority of them. There's definitely an element of, some of these people are sociopaths. I wouldn't say I've encountered, any like psychopaths. I've encountered some criminals that have psychopathic tendencies.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of.
But I wasn't aware of meeting any actual psychopaths. But some definitely, killed people, ruthlessly and stuff like that. But
so more so than that, psychological breakdown that like true crime podcasters and everybody wants to do nowadays. You're saying that a lot of it is just good old fashioned greed. And maybe there's some narcissism with the power thing. But I mean, to be honest, anyone who's successful in anything has a certain level of narcissism. Like, so you have to in a lot of fields. Like, so yeah, I mean, I can see that greed, and like you said, it's opportunity. Yeah. But then again, it isn't that different, because like people in different kinds of crime, their opportunity is different. Mm-hmm. So, maybe if you took that guy who's dealing cocaine or whatever, started on street level, if you would have put him in a different background, a different situation, he might have been the guy that was, finding a way to get money out of his college, the fundraising, money or whatever. So I can kind of see that the greed is.
Yeah. And it comes down to like what, you had said before about like, it wasn't that you needed the money, it's that you wanted it. And so it's like those people go through that and think like, well, I don't necessarily need to do this, but I have done it. I can push the envelope. So I want to try. Why not? What am I going to lose?
I mean, me personally, I would probably like the challenge aspect of it.
Right.
And I do think I'm a little of an antisocial personality. We were kind of joking, but not really. I was like, wow, Adam's kind of an antisocial personality guy. I was like, the whole against the government thing, the white collar thing, the extreme kidnapping thing is actually, off of the norm. And I'm the same way. Like, everything I want to do is not antisocial in the way to where it's like dangerous to people. I mean, where the society, the rat race, all that stuff just doesn't interest you. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to conform to this. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's a unique blending of anarchism and capitalism. It's called I can never say the word, but Jeff Berwick, check out Jeff Berwick. He pretty much pioneered the whole thing, as far as I'm concerned.
It's that's exactly what it is. It's a combination of anarchy and capitalism.
For sure.
It's like a fusion. And
capitalism.
I think it's foundational. What it's built on is like the non-aggression principle. But they consider taxation theft, and they're all for capitalism, but they're more about freedom, freedom of choice, freedom of speech, freedom of everything.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's something to check out too. But yeah, I agree with you with that. Pretty much how I am, and you're pretty much like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it like, well, maybe it is a bad thing, but I'm saying I identify with it. And, I have certain moral values that are really important to me, but I'm not hell bent on, even if I had the platform, convincing the rest of the country to feel and think the way that I do so that we all live in harmony.
Yeah,
no, go off and live in your own harmony.
I'm going to waste my time.
Away from me.
Yeah.
Probably exactly. Somewhere else.
Keep your shit away from me.
If you're a Mormon, stay over there in Utah.
Yeah.
Have your own commune, man. I don't care, but just don't bother me. Don't tread on me.
Shove that down my throat. Yeah.
Right, don't tread on me.
We had a lot of like bourbon late night talks about some of this stuff over some Evan or whatever it was. Do you feel that even though they weren't violent offenders necessarily, that some of the guys that you were locked up with who were maybe lifelong white collar, had never been involved in nothing else, do you think that they were equally dangerous to criminals of other types? Like, do you think that they were? No,
I don't think so. Most white collar guys most of them are generally pretty smart, and if they were dedicated to like white collar crime, and I kind of like back when documents were still, people used paper for everything, like real estate deeds and, stocks and bonds and, things like that. Everything was on paper. Mm-hmm. There was a class of white collar criminals that did all kinds of stuff rooted and based in paper scams,
Yeah.
And once, the internet came into play and everything migrated to, email and all this stuff.
All digital record.
A lot of those guys kind of like migrated to hacking, cracking, and carding, because everything's digital now. So, now those guys traded in their briefcases and paper and, laser printers for, a computer and a laptop and a cell phone. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a lot of different white collar crime. Most people traditionally think of it as, an executive or a CEO at a big company who's just, stealing or some stock investment guy that's ripping people off like Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
Who was huge, by the way. I mean, now like a guy like him.
I admire his success.
Well, here's the thing about him though, is like we were talking about before about how financial crimes don't really hurt people. His financial crimes hurt people, like actual people.
Yeah.
Like
actual people he proclaimed to care about. That was a big problem to me.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of people lost their life savings with that guy.
Yeah, that disgusts.
Suicide because of that guy. Sure. You know what I mean? So like, there are financial criminals that have done, a financial crime that was so, so large that it actually impacted real people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Suicides and homelessness.
He's what you're saying, where it was kind of like he couldn't stop.
Yeah.
There's no reason he had to go as far with it as he did.
Right.
He could have stopped 20% of the way into that, gone off somewhere. You know what I mean? But he was like addicted to it. It seems like he's addicted to like the rush.
Yeah, there's some people like that too, that they got all the money they need or will ever need, but they can't stop doing it because they're just addicted to it,
He did have a weird complex, didn't he? Like where he was around all these rich people, he wasn't well off that way, so maybe he didn't feel as guilty taken from them. Because I remember he kind of just like implanted himself in their lives at the beginning through like a country club or something. And he didn't come from the background that they did necessarily. I don't think he was poor as a kid or anything, but he wasn't on their level financially. So maybe there was a little something there where, I don't know, he felt like he's getting even. Like he felt like, well, screw them, Yeah,
I don't know too much about his background history.
I watched a few things on it, but she knows that like I'm so busy with work and stuff like that. I don't remember half the shit I watch.
Yeah,
I fall asleep halfway through.
As far as he goes, he's one that, like you said, some of his crimes really did actually damage very real people. So he is one that I look at like, wow, man, like you really did hurt some people.
Yeah.
Like your crimes are not victimless completely, buddy.
No.
Sure,
and you could argue that someone like him has done more damage to people than like a Jeffrey Dahmer. Like he could literally have more lives ended, or at least in complete misery based on their lifestyle, everything being taken.
Everything they have, going into poverty and homelessness.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to get at when I was asking you about motives is what's her name? The
Elizabeth Holmes.
Elizabeth Holmes. She's a good example of, she could have been a very successful doctor, research biologist, any of these things. That wasn't good enough for her. Mm-hmm. So is there kind of a complex with a lot of these people where it's like, I want to be the guy. I want to be the top, like basically notoriety or whatever other term you'd want to use. Yeah. Like notoriety, essentially.
I hate using
I don't think there's a whole lot of those people. I think they're probably the exception, because I don't think, like, if you really look at her case, I mean, it's fraud from top to bottom. You know what I mean?
100%. The whole way through. Yeah. That's the problem. It's like she could have just done good things.
Yeah, she was intelligent enough to be successful.
Time, and done things right. She could have eventually maybe had some great, things to add to the medical community, but she was a complete.
And what that reminds me of is guys like Michael Franzese or all these mob guys, where in every documentary you hear, man, he could have ran any Fortune 500 company as a CEO,
right? But
he chose to do this instead.
Yeah.
And it is interesting. Maybe it's that rush that
Well, I think in a lot of cases, especially environment plays a role, because like his environment, that's where he grew up around, is those type of people.
Right.
Or was the main guy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So at that time, so like if he was removed from that environment, yeah, maybe he could have ran a company. But being in the environment that he was and surrounded by the people that he was surrounded by,
yeah,
this makes sense. That's what he's going to fall into.
Absolutely.
And he was very successful at it,
Right.
So environment does play a role in a lot of these situations, but it's not exclusive. It's not, you can't point to environment as the sole cause or factor, but it is a contributing factor.
Yeah, likewise with her, it's kind of like, if you really look at it, you'd almost think that she's further on the evil scale, because she had the opportunity to do plenty of other things that weren't fraudulent, that weren't quote unquote evil, but she didn't. Whereas, like you said, like a Franzese or somebody really didn't have the opportunity to be a CEO of a major corporation.
Well, yeah.
He did go to college, but it's kind of a front. It wasn't as though he. So yeah, that's definitely, it's interesting to me. And like part of what I said, you gave us part of what I was going to talk about in our separate part of the segment, is I think there is something to an intelligence level where, somebody who's in what they'd call a white collar criminal racket or whatever it is simply skipping the steps of certain danger. If you decide to be a drug dealer, your first 8 ball can put you away for like 10 years.
Or put you in the ground.
First time or put you in the ground. First time you make a deal, you never even had a chance to see if your plan worked. Whereas it's normally not the case with people with more, I think that there is an intelligence difference there, not just environment. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. To do those types of crimes, it does. It really does.
It's a lot safer. I agree.
Yeah, it's a lot safer.
Yeah.
And by intelligence, I actually mean like common sense. Like rather than putting yourself in danger, the only danger you had, for instance, was honestly the people that were in your circle.
Right, which is always.
And like you said in the short, there's always a snitch.
Always a risk.
There's always a rat.
Yeah.
Do you keep in contact with any of these guys you were locked up with? I never really asked you that before.
I've kept in contact with some of my cellies.
Yeah.
but nobody else. Just the good cellies, because I had some really good cellies, and they were at really good guys. And I maintained contact with let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Damn.
When I first got out, I was probably still talking to about five of these guys. So years, lost track of some of them, but I talked to one of them fairly regularly, and he's worked for me. In fact, after we both got out.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you, because like we've talked to Herc, and I find a lot of motivation in some of these guys. Have at least the guys you've kept in contact with, some of them really turned their lives around and kind of stayed away from, like you said, like a lot of them learned their lesson.
Right.
Have they gone on to be successful? Like, and
or at least leading just a normal life,
Just lead a normal life. Yeah. Like some of the guys were already successful when they went in, and they're back out, and they're, they just picked up where they left off. Not necessarily with crime,
right?
Assets, and already had millions of dollars anyway that was not even related to their crimes.
Right.
Fine. But some of the other guys that I kept in contact with went on to get out and, like she said, lead normal lives and get out.
It was my God's honest that I was all about a non-violent approach, but it seems truth was a non-topic.